All right. Hello, my name is Andy Bobholz. I'm a coach here in Green Bay, Wisconsin in the United States. I've been working with Angels at Bat since the beginning. I'm actually Max's father, if you're familiar with Max, with Angels at Bat. And we recently traveled this past June to Kenya. We ran some tournament there. We worked with a few teams. And as we kind of were working with those teams, and talking with the coaches, one of the things we kind of thought would be a good idea is looking at where to place players, how to develop batting orders, and some of those concepts. We were just really impressed with some of the skills from the players, and now putting together something for the coaches so that we can kind of help teams to maybe gain a little bit more success by putting players in the right positions and hopefully allowing your teams to maybe win a few more games or to optimize the success of each of the players. So that's what we're going to start with here, putting players in the right position. This is a guide for coaches, all right, and how to kind of develop your team from a batting order perspective, and then also from a, where to place players out in the field as well. What are some of the characteristics for each of those positions? So we're going to get started right away here. So batting order is the first thing on our list. And basically, it's important to put players in the right spot in the batting order to maximize your potential to score runs. Obviously, the more runs you score, the better chance you have of winning the game. So we generally want players who are your best hitters and your best players at getting on base. We kind of want those loaded towards the front part of your lineup, and then the somewhat weaker maybe batters down towards the bottom of the lineup. So let's look at specific orders here and some of the characteristics that would work best in those positions. So in our leadoff spot, our leadoff hitter is someone who has some speed and a high on-base percentage. So they're going to be able to get on base frequently. And once they're on base, they have the ability to get around the bases quickly so that we can obviously get them in to score. They should also be a smart hitter. So they're not swinging at pitches that are outside of the strike zone. They're willing to take a walk. They have good contact with the ball, not necessarily don't have to be a strong hitter from a distance perspective, but someone that makes contact with the ball and has a higher likelihood to get on base. They don't strike out very often. And then we also want that person obviously to be a smart base runner as well, because they're going to have hopefully the first opportunity to score runs for you. Their role as a leadoff hitter is basically to get on base and to start the inning and kind of create pressure on that opposing pitcher right away. So as soon as you get a base runner on base, that pitcher has to think about those base runners, and they become generally a little less effective when that happens. They should also be willing to maybe take a few pitches to see what the pitcher is offering. So if the pitcher is wild and they're not able to throw strikes, we don't want to help them out by swinging at balls. We may want to take a couple of strikes as well, just to see what pitches they can throw and what pitches they lead off with. And that helps the other hitters as they come along. So the rest of your lineup should always kind of be watching the batters. They want to figure out, one of the things they do want to figure out is the strike zone of the umpire, because every umpire has a little bit of different strike zone. So they have to pay attention to that. If an umpire is calling a strike that's a little bit higher, the other batters need to know that they can't take that pitch with two strikes, that they should be swinging at that ball, even though it might be a little bit high, because that umpire is going to call it as a strike. So those are some things that they can kind of pay attention to as that game is moving on. And those are things, again, as a leadoff batter, all right, they'll let the other batters know, hey, this umpire is calling a low strike, a high strike. All right, they give them a little extra on the outside. Things like that can help. Or even he's got a really good curveball. Some of those things can help the next batters coming up. So then our number 2 hitter, our characteristics there, again, good bat control, ability to advance runners. Generally, your number 2 hitter could be your best bunter. So if you do some bunting, if that's part of your offensive strategy, they're going to be probably your best bunter, because we're going to, again, try to move that runner over to second base and into a scoring position as quickly as possible. Again, they should be a smart player where they're getting the bat on the ball. Again, it doesn't need to be a strong power hitter where they're hitting the ball very far. All right, but good contact and the ability to kind of move that runner over via a bunt or a base hit. So the role then is to support that leadoff hitter by advancing them to a scoring position and then setting the table for the big hitters behind. And so they're kind of a little bit of a selfless player or more of a team player, because they're willing to bunt and maybe taken out in order to move that leadoff hitter, again, into second or even third base into a scoring position. So that's our number 2 hitter. Our number 3 hitter is generally your best hitter. All right, the one that has the best average, the one that's most likely to hit the ball. Again, we have runners on base, maybe 1, maybe 2. So this is the person we want in that situation, because they're going to have the highest likelihood of getting a base hit and getting that person into home and scoring a run. So they should have a high batting average, which again means they're hitting the ball very well. This person could have good power, doesn't necessarily need to have good power, but more on the batting average side, so more likely to hit the ball. Good power is nice in this position as well. Again, another solid base running skills, because as those previous batters are on base and they're having base runners, they should be paying attention, because if that runner goes home and there's a throw to home, this person should be advancing to second base or even further if that ball is overthrown or there's a bad throw. So he can also kind of get around those bases as well and pays attention to those things. So your best all-around hitter generally is your number 3 hitter. They should hopefully have some speed as well. Power is kind of a bonus here if they have it, but a smart base runner as well. So their role in that number 3 spot is to drive in the first 2 hitters, be a consistent source of hits and RBIs, which are runs batted in. One of the stats that they keep track of here in the U.S. pretty closely. And then they also have that potential for extra base hits. So they're going to hit that ball maybe a little harder, a little farther into the gaps where, again, they get those extra base hits and push those runners ahead into score. The number 4 hitter, we generally call the cleanup spot. This is your power hitter. This is the guy that can hit home runs, that can hit the ball hard, can hit the ball far. They have a high slugging percentage, and that generally means that more of their hits are for extra bases as opposed to just hitting singles. Again, this person kind of in charge of getting those runners around. So we've gotten those early players on base. This is the one that, has the highest likelihood of either hitting a home run or hitting it far. So again, we can maximize a number of runs scored. This one may not always be the highest average, all right, but this is kind of your power hitter, the one with the strongest bat skills as far as they can hit it pretty far. Their role, like it says here, drive in runs, especially when runners are on base. So we call this the money spot, all right, where a home run can break a game open. So if this one can hit the ball hard and get those extra bases, we can score multiple runs. And whenever we can score multiple runs in an inning, that's huge. Then with our number 5 hitter, okay, again, another power type hitter is generally in this spot. Generally not as powerful, or maybe not quite the level of your number 4 hitter. So this might be your number 2 power hitter. But again, their goal is pretty much the same. All right, we've gotten those players on base. We've been driving them in. This one's going to continue that momentum. The goal is to drive in runs, hit the ball far, hit the ball hard, and be that threat for extra bases. So that is your number 5 hitter. And then the number 6 hitter, we often call like the second leadoff hitter. So this is another player with, again, similar on-base skills as our leadoff hitter. So your leadoff hitter is probably going to be one of your better hitters, one of your better guys as far as getting on base, maybe not as much power. So number 6 is probably that second or third guy in that list of just guys that get on base. They know how to read pitches, they'll walk, they'll make contact with the ball, they don't strike out a lot. And again, we're kind of looking for this player just to get on base so that now the bottom part of the order can start again, and we start, again, driving in runs from this position. So this guy's probably not a big power hitter. Again, goal of just kind of getting guys on base again. And then our 7, 8, and 9 hitters. So this is the bottom half, bottom third, I guess, of our batting order. These, again, if ideally you want to have 9 really good hitters. But generally in the 7, 8, 9 hitters, those are the players that are not your strongest hitters. All right. But they may be, strong defensive players out in the field. So you want them out there because of their defensive skills, but you're not relying on them necessarily to be strong on base guys or strong batting average guys. They're more out there for their defensive skills. But again, they have that ability to get on base. The number 9 spot typically here in the U.S. is used for the pitcher because they typically would not use a DH in some places. But if they DH for pitchers, then your DH can be anywhere in the order, right? But again, generally, these are not your strongest hitters down here. If you were to, kind of rank your players, I would say that number 9 hitter would probably be out of these 7, 8, 9. That 9 would probably be the best of these 3, because then you have, again, that 9 batter getting on base when it turns over to the top of the order again. So you have your leadoff and your best players coming up. So I would put, out of 7, 8, 9, out of those 3 players, I would put the best hitter at number 9 so that they can, again, get on base for the top of the order when that comes back around. So again, ideally, you'd love to have 9 really good offensive players, really good batters. But, generally that's not always the case. So this is where you would put those batters that struggle a little bit. And again, if they get on, if they're hitting, it's a bonus because they'll have some people on base in front of them for you to score. So that's generally how you would lay out your hitters. The hitters, it's not necessarily by position or anything like that. You would just develop that order based on the skills of your player. So then let's look at some of the characteristics by position. So when we look at the 9 positions on the baseball field, it's really important for a couple of reasons. Number one, you want kids playing at a position where they have confidence, where they have the skills to be successful at that position. But then they can develop those skills and have a confidence in that position as well, so they can develop as a confident player and a strong player for you. Again, when you're working with really young players, it's important to get them to try different positions and to get a feel for what they're good at, and then you can also assess some of the skills that they're really good at, and then kind of develop them into positions. So let's look at some of the positions and what we need as far as characteristics by position. So with pitching, obviously arm strength and precision is the 2 biggest things. Can they throw the ball hard? Because obviously it's a little bit harder to throw a ball that's coming at you faster. And then precision. Can they throw that ball to the strike zone? Okay? You can have really strong arms, kids that can throw the ball really hard, but if they can't throw strikes, they're going to walk a lot of players, and that's going to cost you runs on the defensive side of things. So you want to make sure that they can successfully get the ball over the plate. So sometimes you might have some kids that maybe don't have as strong of an arm, but they can throw strikes and throw the ball over the plate. Sometimes that's even a little bit more valuable than the actual velocity. Again, ideally, you'd like to have both. So if you have a kid with a really strong arm, working on that precision is really important. And then if you have a player that can throw strikes and throw the balls over the plate really well, then you can develop some strength as they get older as well. Strategic thinking. So pitchers need to understand hitters and manage the game from the mound. Obviously, they have the ball in their hands at the start of every play. They start every play. They also need to mentally be able to handle that as well. They might walk a batter. Do they get frustrated? Do they, can they bring themselves back together to start throwing strikes again? They need to remember, this batter hit my fastball, deep into center field last time. All right, I need to keep that pitch down, or maybe I throw more curveballs, something along those lines. So they kind of think about who the batter is and learn from what the batters have done in previous at-bats. Obviously, command the ability to consistently throw strikes, control the location of pitches. All right, we don't want to throw the ball right down the middle of the strike zone every time. All right, we want to be able to use the entire strike zone. All right, the high and inside, low and outside, and kind of change that throughout the pitch sequence. And then mental fortitude, which I was just talking about, that ability to bounce back from mistakes and maintain focus. All right, they need to be resilient. All right, if you have that kid that cries every time something goes wrong, all right, pitching may not be the spot to put that young person or that player. They need to be able to kind of handle. All right, the other team gets a couple of hits. All right, you walk a batter. All right, they score a run or two. Can they kind of gather themselves, put themselves back together? All right, and be able to come back and throw strikes. Right, and that's not an easy thing, especially for younger players. But when you can put all that together, a strong arm, accuracy, and that strong mental capacity, and that resiliency, those are some things that make really, really good pitchers. And your pitchers are kind of your leaders of the team as well. They're probably your better athletes in general. So look for some of those types of qualities as well when you're trying to develop pitchers and develop players into pitchers. All right, catcher is another position where you need to have those strong leadership skills. All right, they're the ones that are, again, receiving every pitch. They're looking at batters. They're kind of setting up the players in the field. So these are guys that need to be strong leaders within your team. They also obviously need a strong arm, that ability to throw out base stealers. So they need to be able to get that ball from home plate to second base and throw out. That's the longest throw that they make with some accuracy and with some strength. Quick reflexes, essential for blocking pitches and handling bunts. So when those pitches aren't perfect right down the middle, they can block the pitch. It's not getting past them. They can get to the balls that aren't perfect pitches. They kind of have to be pretty kind of fearless back there. All right, they put on the catcher's gear. They should feel kind of fearless back there as far as just knocking down pitches and making sure that they stay in front. Again, some of those leadership things, they're going to call pitches, fastballs, curveballs, and they're going to kind of, along with the pitcher, kind of remember the batters. And if that, you threw the ball past that person on 2 straight fastballs, all right, and you don't think they can hit it again, all right, he's going to call another fastball. They kind of manage that game from behind the plate. Again, they should be smart players. They understand the game. And that ability, the other piece that kind of plays into being the catcher, is that ability to build positive relationships with umpires. All right, they're always talking very kindly to the umpires. They're respecting their calls, those types of things. Even if the other players on the team don't agree, or even if he doesn't agree with how they're calling balls and strikes, he has to be able to manage that maybe frustration and not take it out on the umpire. All right, they're going to kind of develop those relationships with umpires and kind of get be friendly with them so that, when those calls are close, maybe they benefit from a call because he's built that relationship with that umpire. So I think that's another piece to being a catcher, is that ability to develop that relationship with an umpire and that respect with an umpire. It may help you in the long run. Obviously, their strong legs, that ability to squat for extended periods of time. There's a lot of catchers in the major leagues here in the U.S. that are kind of shorter, squattier guys, but strong, thick legs, because it's so that they can kind of pop up out of that stance and fire the ball down to second base. And again, they have to be able to catch the ball. They have to catch every pitch, including those in the dirt, no fear. They got to be able to block pitches, and kind of have that, that ball's coming at them generally pretty fast, or if it's a pop-up or a foul tip, they're able to still kind of protect themselves, protect the umpire, and keep that ball in front of them. So those are some of the qualities that you want to look for in your catcher. In my opinion, pitcher and catcher are probably your two, most important players defensively on the field. All right, they're obviously the ones that are handling the ball back and forth with each batter that comes along. So those two should be working together, all right, and looking at the different batters that come up and look at what things are working. So they should probably talk after every inning. Hey, this guy really struggled with an inside pitch. Let's try, when he comes back up, let's throw more inside pitches, things along those lines. All right, infielders. All right, first baseman. With all of our infielders, obviously they need to be able to field a ground ball. Some of the pieces as well, if we look specifically at first baseman, all right, flexibility and height are two qualities that are generally pretty important. It's a little bit harder to throw the ball over to first base or throw it over the first baseman's head if he's a taller person. So they just have a wider catching radius, we call it, where they can get to a lot more balls because they're just longer players. So generally your first basemen are taller, and often they're left-handed. So if you have left-handed players, first base is a pretty good place for them. But again, they need to have really good catching skills. When that ball comes over to first base, it's not always a perfect throw. So they need to be able to judge those throws coming in. All right, be able to scoop it if it's bounced, be able to reach up while keeping their foot on the base. So balance is another characteristics that's really helpful. But just really good at catching the ball when it's thrown to them from a lot of different angles and a lot of different heights. A lot of times your first basemen are also your power hitters. First basemen generally don't need to be super fast. Speed helps obviously in any position, but there's a lot of first basemen that are a little slower moving, but they're bigger, longer guys. So first base isn't necessarily a position where you need a lot of speed. Second baseman, and the reason we put left-handed players there generally is because when we look at turning double plays with shortstop and second base, it's a little bit harder to turn those double plays from a left-handed fielding position. So that's why it's sometimes kind of convenient to put your left-handers either at first base or in the outfield. All right, from second base, we're looking again generally at some quickness, obviously quick hands, feet, good fielding range so they can cover some area. Again, the wider area that they can cover, the less balls that get past the infield, all right, and the better chance of getting them out at first base. Your second baseman doesn't require a really strong arm because they have a shorter throw to first base. So if you have a really good infielder but doesn't have a really strong arm, second base is a really good spot for that guy or girl. And then speed, again, especially with second base and shortstop, all right, the faster they are in those spots, and not necessarily like, forward and backward speed, but side to side speed. All right, so they may not be, if you're running a race, it may not be the fastest person in that race, but side to side, they can cover a lot of area. Second basemen generally are not super big. Again, we're looking sometimes for those smaller, faster guys or girls, but they're good defensive skills to cover that middle and right side of the infield. All right, then we move on to shortstop. The shortstop is often considered the most athletic player on the field, the greatest range. This is probably where you're going to put your best defensive infielder, is that shortstop. Most of the hits generally end up coming to the shortstop. Obviously, they need a strong enough arm to get it from shortstop to first base, but we want that shortstop to cover a lot of ground, be able to field the ball really well, and be able to make that throw to first base. So generally, our shortstop is going to be our best infielder. Again, strong leadership skills, because generally that shortstop is one of the better players on your team. All right, they should also have those strong leadership skills. All right, they should be calling out each when each batter is up, where that ball is going. All right, if there's a man on first, we should say ground ball infield, we're going to second base. And he should be communicating that to his other infielders so that they all know where that ball should go if it comes to the infield. And then he should also be setting up any cutoff plays when the ball is hit to the outfield and kind of guiding the infield as far as that goes as well. Strong enough arm to get it to first base. All right, generally our third baseman is going to be our strongest arm, because they have to get that ball from third base to first base. All right, but shortstop shouldn't be too far behind as well, because again, they've got a long throw, and sometimes when they feel that ball deep in the shortstop position, it's a pretty long throw as well. All right, your third baseman, quick reflexes, because that ball comes up to them pretty quickly on the left side of the infield there. And then again, a strong enough arm to get that ball all the way over to first base. They also need to read the batter and be able to pick up if it's a bunt and calling some of those things out. But your third baseman has to have those skills to kind of react quickly to the ball. So they have to be a really good fielder. This is not where you want to put a weak infielder, because sometimes that can be dangerous. That ball comes off the bat pretty hard to third base, and if they're not a strong, quick reacting player, that ball can come at them pretty hard, and if they don't get that glove up, it can be dangerous to them. So you want to have a pretty solid person there at third base. Then we're going to jump out to the outfield. In general, speed is obviously the big piece of the outfield, because they got to cover a bigger area when the ball is hit to that. Of our outfielders, your best outfielder should be your center fielder, and generally they're the one that's the fastest as well, because they do need to cover the most amount of space out there in center field. Obviously, they need excellent judgment and awareness to be able to track fly balls. All right, it's important as a coach to hit these players fly balls and hit them off a bat so they can kind of judge where that ball is going. Generally, we tell outfielders your first step should always be backwards so that ball doesn't get over their head. And then from there, they can either come forward, left, right, back, based on where they see the ball being read. But what you don't want to see is that ball hit over their head. All right, especially if they see that ball hit off the bat, they take those couple of steps in, and then all of a sudden the ball goes over their head. All right, we don't want to see that happen. We want to keep all the balls in front of the outfielders. So that just ability to judge a fly ball and to be able to catch a fly ball. If you can find 3 players that do that really well, you'll have a pretty solid team. If you've got 2 of those players, all right, I would generally put your best one in center field and then the other one into left field. All right, with right field, we want a strong arm to right field, because they need to be able to make that throw from the right field all the way to third base. All right, they've got the longest throw in the outfield. So our right fielder should be a pretty strong arm. So that's our outfield positions. Just that ability to catch a fly ball obviously is going to be the most important. But of your outfielders, your center fielder is generally the fastest and your best outfielder. All right. And then we have left and right fielders that will fill in either way, with the right fielder being the one with the strongest arm. All right. Again, here's my name. Here's my email. If you have questions, you can certainly email me and I will send you a response back. This was meant to be just kind of a quick overview as we watch the teams play this past June when we were in Kenya watching the tournament in Kongoni. I just thought maybe, we have a lot of players that have the skills, and now I think the coaches understand the game and they understand some of the strategy. Now, we want to look at what can these coaches do to kind of take their teams to the next level and be maybe just a little bit more competitive by putting players in the right positions and getting them in the batting order to maximize the runs that they can score. So hopefully this helps you. Again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. I'd be happy to give you some more information if you need it. But thanks for watching. Good luck with your teams. And I wish you the best.